Have you ever been faced with making a high-stakes health-related decision? Things like terminal illness treatment, long-term care, or health decisions on behalf of your dependents?
Well, it turns out you don't have to do this alone. Our next guest has a PhD in bioethics, and as a registered nurse, she helps people make really complex health decisions. Please welcome to the show the founder of Greenberg Consulting, Rebecca Greenberg. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, being here, Rebecca. So, Rebecca, you provide what you call decision-making support. So walk us through what this is and why people might use it.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to. So we know that when we make decisions about our health or others, it's tremendously difficult and really weighty. So decision-making support is a systematic process where I work with my clients to help figure out what the decision should be. But more than that, it's the why. Why are you making the decision? And the why is so important because it helps to minimize decisional regret long term. So people really seek out the service when they're looking to not go through it alone and really decrease the burden of having that weight of making that decision.
Okay, I think a lot of people would be curious how you got into this line of work.
Yeah, so I've been in healthcare for over 20 years now. I started as a bedside nurse, and I saw firsthand the struggles people went through when doctors would give them the options and then be left to make that decision. So I went back to school and ultimately got my PhD in medical ethics. And then since that time, I have worked in-house at hospitals like Sick Kids or Sinai, led research programs. But since starting my own practice, I still support organizations in the healthcare space like hospitals, but where I really find joy and purpose is working with individuals and families to help them make their decisions.
That's great. Let's talk about some different kinds of scenarios that people might be in that they might need your services for.
Yeah, so I see three primary scenarios. The first scenario is making a decision on behalf of yourself. So let's say someone who has had cancer and it's come back and they know that it is going to be terminal. Do they try some more treatment or they move to comfort care? I see decisions being made between two people. Often that might be a couple, let's say deciding if they should start a family or they should grow their family. And then the third one is making decisions on behalf of others when they're not able to make it themselves. And we see this a lot with making decisions on behalf of our kids, on behalf of our spouses as they age, and also our parents. So is it time to put mom or dad in a long-term care home?
Oh, I mean, each one of those scenarios, you can understand how hard those decisions are. So what are the common difficulties that people encounter when they're trying to make these complex decisions?
So there's definitely some pitfalls that are helpful to know so that you can avoid them yourself. So one is when you're making a decision with someone else and you don't agree. Let's take a couple who is not on the same page about if they should have another child. I often see them trying to convince the other that they're wrong, that their opinion doesn't matter. So someone might say, I don't want a child because I'm really worried about finances, and someone else might say, but family is everything. At the end of the day, we actually don't have to agree on everything when we're making a decision with someone else. And we need to make space for that. What we do need to focus on is where are the things that really we can converge and where we want to hinge that decision. So that would be pitfall number one. The second one is we often think that when we're uncomfortable, we feel that sense of discomfort, that anxiety, that it's wrong. But when we talk about these kinds of decisions, we have to ask ourselves, are these really feel-good moments? What is that discomfort telling us? It often is a sign that we care, that we're thoughtful humans, right? It's not necessarily a sign that it's wrong. And the last thing is, just because we can doesn't mean we should. So I think in society today, we have this thought that more is better, like more is more. But in healthcare, that's not always the case. And sometimes we need to shift our focus, depending on what matters to us, to quality of life over quantity of life.
That's great tips.
Yeah.
Let's get into your decision-making framework. So your first consideration is identifying someone's values. I think this is such a crucial thing at any stage of life, but give us an example of what this looks like in this framework.
Yeah, so values is really just getting at what matters to somebody and what is at stake for them. So let's take that scenario we mapped out about making a decision if you should put your loved one in a long-term care home. So questions to get at the values that would guide that decision is, tell me about your parent. Who have they been their whole life? who are they now? How have they made decisions in their past? What is their risk tolerance? And if they were in the room now and they were their best self, they were capable to make this decision on their own, what would they say?
That's big. The next one that was on that list was identify themes of conflict. First of all, what is that? And then how does that show up?
So usually at the center of a decision is all kinds of conflict. And the conflict comes from actually our values, because often there's many things that matter to us, right? Physical safety, emotional well-being, financial security, family relations, and we eventually can't prioritize them all. So the conflict comes from not knowing what the right thing to do is. So let's say I had a client recently, was in her mid-30s, wasn't sure if she wanted to have kids, but was not in a position to yet make that decision. And she was trying to decide if she should freeze her eggs. And she was conflicted about the toll emotionally, physically, financially, and still uncertain, right? So there's conflict embedded in these decisions. And so I work with my clients to help them really tease out what are those trump card values that they're gonna use to make their decision and move forward.
That's great. So lastly, you map out a variety of scenarios, and it's not just best or worst, so tell us more.
So yeah, for sure. Most of us are really good about thinking of the extremes, but we often forget about the middle ground. What is most likely? We don't spend enough time thinking about that. And then when we do think about the worst case scenario, we often forget to ask, how likely is that to actually materialize? And is that something that we could live with, or could we change the course? Let's think of an example of a family trying to decide if they should start growth hormone treatment for a child who has short stature, right? Best cases, it works really well. Worst cases, it's marginal benefit and years of treatment. But most likely, there'll be some benefit, and they need to remember that as that child ages and their voice is more relevant, they can also stop.
Interesting.
You know, I think if you haven't already had to make any one of these difficult medical decisions, I think at some point we're all going to have to face some kind of decision for ourselves or others. So what's the one takeaway you want us to leave here with today?
Yeah, it's a good question. So certainly I agree we all will have to do this. And actually, women disproportionately shoulder the burden of decisions. They make decisions for themselves, their family members, and they usually are the ones to lead those conversations. So the takeaway here is to be compassionate. And when you're going through that time, talk to yourself internally the way you talk to one of your closest friends. And looping back to that theme about what is the relevance of discomfort, maybe see it as something to lead into and to actually say, this is a sign that I care, and I know I'm gonna come out the other end, and it's just to deproblematize that negative experience.
This is big and important conversations that we're having here. Rebecca, thank you so much. Yeah, great information.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.